I get to talk about something that is maybe not quite as intimidating as what you've heard in the second phase of work, but it's the permitting process. A lot of what was discussed by Aaron was how we can actually speed up that process, and he actually was a great introduction to what my conversation is going to be with you today. So I'm going to focus on permitting, and the specific topics are going to be when do you need a permit, and Craig actually talked about that at the beginning with the Form 1 presentation that he had. I'm going to walk you through about 4 plan check and permit processes that Santa Clara County has, a couple of informational pieces related to timeline, some recommendations, and then end with resources before we go into the next topic. This third section focuses on permitting, construction logistics, and closeout. So when is a permit required? This first paragraph here is actually a combination of some information that came from the Form 1 policy that Craig spoke to, as well as the Santa Clara County website. And I'm going to read it. A building permit must be obtained before you erect, construct, enlarge, alter, move, repair, improve, convert, or demolish any building or structure or portion thereof. So Aaron gave you some examples. Craig also did. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. This can be anything from new construction. It can also be related to building and interior space demolitions, as well as renovations. So all of these things require a permit. And now what I'm going to try and do is walk you through the processes that the Santa Clara County has, which is the largest jurisdiction and the lion's share of where our building permit plan check projects go through. So it used to be called pre-plan check. As a part of the creation of the new project management resource group, we've been working with the county to document these processes so that it's clear to everybody how you work with the county. So it's called a pre-submittal consultation. The Department of Project Management uses this exclusively when it comes to putting new buildings on campus. Right now, they're very active in using this for the Comstock building that's going to be going up over in the Escondido Village area. And what it is it's a meeting to familiarize the Santa Clara County building plan checkers, the planning office, and the fire marshal area with the intent of what our projects are. This can be anywhere from a 15-minute consultation for a very simple project that you might have, or it can be up to half an hour, 2 hour. It's something that you schedule directly with the building inspection office at Santa Clara County, and you go there with your architect. If you have a general contractor, you can take them, but it's typically your architect, or it could just be you, so that you can give them some information on what it is that you're trying to do, how you're approaching the project. They're going to share verbal information with you. They are not going to be marking on drawings. It's more of just an information exchange that will help to streamline the process for when you're ready to submit your plans for review. And this is just a brief graphic of how that process works. Aaron talked a little bit about the over-the-counter permit. I'm going to speak to that in a few slides down, but there's another way of looking at that, and that's what we call the express plan check and permit process. And this is very similar. You're going to schedule a meeting with the building inspection office. We do have an office here on campus, for those of you that are not aware of it, over at 340 Bon Air Siding. On Tuesdays, there's a Santa Clara County building inspector and a plan checker here on campus, typically from 11 to 12 and 1 to 2:30. You can schedule an appointment with them through Michelle and myself. So that's a reference for you for pre-submittal, or you potentially could use this express plan check permit process flow. This is applicable to projects that have very, very simplistic scopes, minimal complexity. So you're installing a door, maybe you're moving a wall. It relates very closely to what Aaron spoke about on the small projects and the minor modifications to fire alarm systems, be it a device or a sprinkler change. It requires that SUFMO review your plans before you meet with the county. So you need to make sure you get them over to Aaron and the engineers that work for Joe, have them review it, give you your comments, reflect their comments on the drawings, get their stamp, and then you meet with the county inspector, the county plan checker. They're going to go through them. You need to have 3 sets of plans for this. You schedule an appointment, and this is the flow. So we talk a little bit about timeline on this one indirectly. If you're able to go in and you have your SUFMO comments on your plans and you have a complete set of drawings and there are no comments, county will stamp the plans and you'll be able to submit for permit payment. If you have comments that come from the county, they actually will mark them on the drawings so that you can go back to your architect. Sometimes if the architect's with you and it's a minor modification, you might be able to change them, still take advantage of that quick turnaround. Otherwise, you take the plans back, you make the modifications, you call that plan checker, let them know that you're resubmitting, referencing the original plan check number. So that's very important. When you go to the counter, they're going to give you a plan check number. Make sure you keep that with you. And then when the plan checker sees that, it could be up to 1 to 2 weeks, depending on what their workload is or their complexity. Then you'll go through the process and ideally only have one plan check comment to address and get your permit. So that's what we're calling an express plan check and permit process. The next one is applicable to the lion's share of the work that we have on campus, be it new construction, larger renovations, lab remodels. I see familiar faces, and the majority of the full-time project managers are very experienced in this plan check and process. This is an on-site visit to Santa Clara County. You can use the pre-submittal consultation prior to this, and depending on the complexity of your project and maybe some questions that you're not clear on, I would urge you to use that. But what you're going to do here is you're going to submit your plans. This is a larger amount of plans. You need 5 sets to leave with the county. And average review time can be anywhere to 6 to 8 weeks. That depends on the complexity. It can be longer. Aaron alluded to the fact that this process actually is one that involves the county fire, and county fire does not have all the resources for a quick turnaround that the building inspection office does. So that 6 to 8 weeks can turn into up to 4.5 months, depending on the complexity of your project. If you have other aspects of your project, there could be different permits that are required that could be related to grading. It could be related to hazardous materials, such as what Kip had talked about before, food services, and our land development group down at the county, which is related to grading and drainage. So this one's a little bit more complicated, but Michelle and I have worked very hard on trying to simplify this, and I would welcome any feedback that you have. But you basically start at the building counter. Can get this mouse here. Building counter, they give you your plan check number. They're going to stamp the plans with that plan check number. They're going to distribute it to the different divisions that need to review it. If there are any comments, it's going to come over here to the resubmittal route, and you're going to get a correction letter. You're going to need to respond to it, and then you need to go back to the county and resubmit your plans with your comments, referencing the plan check. If by chance you are fortunate enough and you've really done a great job through the pre-submittal consultation, working with your architects, utilizing all the internal resources within the university to make sure that you have the standards covered for the Stanford delivery process, you could submit your plans, go through that review process. Everybody's in agreement with what you've submitted, and within 4 to 6 weeks, you could get a response back on your plans and pay for your permit. So that gives you an idea of the standard plan check permit process. So Aaron talked about when you're submitting a plan where you just need to redo some sprinkler heads if it's above 10 on the count for devices, or the function of the space is changing where the whole fire alarm detection and sprinkler system has to be modified. Then you have to go through the fire marshal office at Santa Clara County. Very similar process to what you've seen with building inspection, except you go straight to the fire marshal counter and you submit your plans. It's 3 sets. It's about 6 to 8 weeks, depending on complexity, and it could be extended if they have comments. I would urge you that if you have any questions on what you are proposing, that you use a pre-submittal consultation with County Fire. Given the fact that they do not have the resources to be able to turn things around quickly, it would be helpful for you to have a conversation with them before you submit. Here's a very simple flow. You drop it, they give you a plan check number as well. Their plan check number typically starts with the calendar year, so this year they're 12. I assume January they'll go to 13. They are the only group from Santa Clara County that has a permit queue. So one of the things that Michelle and I work on a weekly basis is to see where Stanford is in the permit queue with county fire. So when you submit a plan and it has enough complexity that it requires all the different divisions to review on your plan checks, it's going to end up on county fire more than likely. We will see where your project is in the queue and can actually share that information with you. We're doing that in the monthly meetings when we meet with the schools that we started, I guess, about a couple of weeks ago. We take the permit queue with us, and we're working with the building inspection office to see if they can't develop one for their reviews that don't require fire. So we talked about the timeline on each of the different types of plan check and permit process with the county. 4.5 months is the longest period. Bing Concert Hall took 7 months. Very complex project, required a lot of different permits, a lot of different submittals, a lot of comments going back and forth. I see Chris Shea is here. He's got projects at School of Medicine. He can probably relate to some of the back and forth that can happen where you think best laid plans can be done quickly, but it can take a little bit longer. Aaron talked about the interpretation of code, and that's a very helpful tool and resource that they are to help us when county fire might look at things a little bit differently than how we would internally. Use your fire marshal engineers. They're a great resource for you. Let's talk about when you want to do projects. So we got started in mid-June with the Project Management Resource Group, and I had a very busy summer before Michelle joined me on trying to manage quite a few requests that came through for a lot of projects that needed to get done. Students needed the beds to be in by, I think, Peter's second week in September, if I've got that right. We had classrooms that had to be done by the third week in September. And we had Bing Concert Hall, which is also on a very tight schedule because their first concert's in January, and they are still working towards their final occupancy. They have temporary. So if you want to have a project in the summer in 2013, and it's a standard plan check permit process flow, you need to get your plans in January, because it can take that long depending on the complexity of your project. If you want to do something this winter break, I'm going to really hope that it's an express permit process or possibly an over-the-counter, because you're running out of time. And the other thing that we've been sharing in our departmental meetings is that I just received an email from Judy Saunders, who's the county fire marshal. They're really low-staffed in the winter months coming up, and so they're very anxious to understand what the workflow is going to be coming for when we go on winter break towards, I guess we start the 24th of December, because they want to figure out how they're going to staff up for inspections and or any plan checks. So plan for December 2014 and get your permits applications in August of 2013. It's a tight schedule. If you have any questions, work with us. We can give you a more realistic, give you a reality of where things are, and also talk with the county to understand the resources. So now we get to recommendations. One of the very first things we did when we met with the county and we talked with all the schools and departments is we want to make sure that a Stanford responsible person, specifically the project managers, all of you sitting in here, put your name on the plan check application as well as on the permit card. Make sure that you attend the county meetings. Don't send your general contractor. They can run the plans down for you. They can answer specific questions for inspections. They can call and take care of those things, but you really need to work on establishing a good relationship and a relationship of trust with Santa Clara County, because that's what our goal is, and that's what we've been working with them for many years to establish. The other thing I'll share with you is get your drawings complete and thorough. We heard a lot of feedback that there were multiple times that plan checks went back and forth, and I can't tell you how long that will delay your project. So please try and do the best you can to understand what the county requirements are, using the resources within Stanford and talking with them. The other thing is that we're here as a resource for the jurisdiction, but we don't submit your plans for getting your permit. We're not calling for inspections. That's not the level that we're here for. That's where your responsibilities continue to remain. Your relationships that you have established with the county, continue them, because that's what's keeping your projects moving and the success on your delivery. Again, expedite your permits using the over-the-counter. I talked previously about the Bon Air Siting Office for Santa Clara County. Use the pre-submittal consultation. There is limited overtime available through the Fire Marshal's office only. Since that's where we seem to get a little log jam, that's where a lot of people want to have their projects expedited. They will come to me and say, Julie, we're getting a lot of requests for overtime. Our resources are tapped out. We need your help in prioritizing. I'll then reach out to the groups that are requesting this, and we'll figure out together. And if need be, it will go all the way up to the president and provost's office, depending on what the priority is. But we really are trying to resolve these things at a more local level. We have a resource with plan check questions. Scott Johnson is your contact. Great person to work with. Fire Marshal Office, you'll talk with Sharon King. She is the gatekeeper, and she will hold you accountable and give you the best direction. We have links with the Santa Clara County office, the building inspection. The org chart's more of an FYI because we don't have a website yet, so we'll get to there. And then I have Joe's contact because from a plan check perspective, when it comes to permitting, they're the major resource for you on campus. So I would urge you to reach out to them. So that finishes up permitting. Our next topic is back with Dave Lennox, and he's going to talk about the construction logistics.
Thanks, Julie. I don't know if you guys have noticed there's a little bit of construction going on campus. Actually, it seems like it's been going on for 6 years, 7 years, but and it is not going to stop. It's going to continue, and it might even get a little bit worse. And so I'm going to talk a little today about construction logistics and talk about some policies, how land is allocated for those logistics, and a little bit about the associated improvements that are important. There is a policy. It is a link off of the website that you can check out. Our department doesn't necessarily figure out construction logistics, but we have a lot to do with the physical planning of them and around them. The contractor typically works with the Department of Project Management or with you to really understand how the logistics will work in an overall way. We set guidelines just to make sure, Gene McCown talked earlier about how community relations are so important with these construction projects. Trucks and dirt right now seem to be the hot topic of the day, and the contractors really have to work closely. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about the physicality of this. We try to plan. We have this map. It is so dynamic. I have to tell you, you think you have it right, and then the next day something changes. But what our real challenge is to make sure that there is contractor parking in many cases, that there's contractor laydown in many cases, that there are, if we displace parking, we work with parking and transportation to talk about, how is that going to happen. We have to worry about how do students, faculty, and visitors move around these construction sites in a safe way, bikes, peds, vehicles. And so there's really a lot to consider. Gene also touched on noise and just the construction impacts, and when we are looking for a site for contractor parking or laydown, we have to think about those as well. One thing that's popped up recently, it's not a new problem, but it's a challenge that I just wanted to point out, is we have a lot of incredible art, exterior art in public places, and one of the things we're realizing is sometimes we're not thinking ahead enough. And we're calling the Cantor Center the day of, oh my gosh, we're about to put a fence around that piece of art. Is that important? They would say, yes, it's a Henry Moore, it's worth $20 million or something, and you have to, they need more heads up. So if you have a project that is even in the vicinity of a piece of art, whether this is inside or outside, please work with Cantor Center. Call them as early as possible. They do not have the resources to jump on this. They need to really have a heads up. And so a good example, there's a sculpture outside of the old GSB South building, which is going to get impacted by contractor laydown. We have to move that now because it's such a tight area. They need to find out early about that. We have, I think was mentioned earlier, there is a standard construction sign that is required of the county for most of the major projects. We're also working on a program, and please feel free to contact us. If you're doing something visible outside and you think people might be interested in what that is, give us a call. We have a template for that. We did paver restorations in the quad, and it was very helpful to have a sign that said, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to be good stewards of the main quad. We also assist in creating signage, so as students are trying to move around where the concert hall construction might be, we provide directional signage to help them move in a safe way. And also, this is a program that really was instigated about 3 or 4 years ago as a comment from the cabinet, and said, this place cannot look like a war zone, and we think that construction sites can even be pretty. So we've developed guidelines for the major construction sites. It's a permanent black chain link fence with black mesh. It's very tightly attached. And then these signs, which are again about being informative, but also doing it with a little bit of class. So it looks like we're paying attention. We don't want students that are here for only 4 years in some cases to feel like they're in the middle of a war zone. We really want them to actually learn from some of this construction. So here are some of the helpful links. Again, our department's not in charge of logistics for projects, but we assist in some of the physical aspects of them. And you can contact Kathy Blake. So I want to introduce Phil Garcia.
Good morning. I'm here to talk to you about how PNTS can help your project develop and implement a construction logistics plan, primarily focused on contractor parking and minimizing impacts to parking and circulation on campus. So discussion topics include construction impacts, reviewing those construction impacts to parking and circulation, minimizing and or mitigating those impacts. Contractor will review contractor parking, service, and delivery policies, and I'll also briefly talk about the pedestrian zone access policy for those projects that occur in the main quad and the surrounding area. So key point is that everyone needs a permit to park on the Stanford campus. Not only do they require a permit, but they need the appropriate permit and need to be directed to park in the appropriate location, focusing specifically on contractors. As Gene McCown mentioned earlier, and I think others have alluded to, Stanford discourages contractor parking in the nearby residential areas. We're trying to be good neighbors. So please make sure project managers are accountable for where their contractors park, whether it be on campus or off campus. All contractor parking arrangements need to be made by the primary project manager with parking and transportation services. Please do not refer your general contractor to contact us initially. We would prefer that the project manager, we need to find a Stanford affiliate who is accountable, responsible for this project before we will sell permits to a contractor. Project managers, projects are required to submit construction logistic plans to Parking and Transportation Services and the University Architect, Campus Planning and Design Office, Kathy Blake, Dave Lennox. If any land is disturbed by construction, they will also need to review the plans if there is a need to perhaps place some of the contractor parking on outside of a parking lot. We work with you to make every effort to minimize the impacts to parking and circulation. And when we talk about circulation, we're also talking about bicycle paths, bike routes, disabled access to facilities. A lot of times smaller building projects impact disabled access to a facility. We want to ensure that disabled access is maintained at all times, and access to and from a disabled parking stall if necessary. We may approve the use of campus parking facilities for contractor parking if space is available, and such use allows for other campus parking demands to be met, including commuter parking, residential, special events parking, visitors, deliveries, service and deliveries, etc. Unfortunately, with the high demand for parking and a lot of the construction-related parking displacement, there is less opportunity to park in PNTS-administered facilities, so we really need to work together to find a suitable parking arrangement for your contractors that meets their needs, in addition to does not adversely impact those of us who are coming to work and doing research every day on campus. If appropriate, service vehicle permits may be sold to specific and limited members of the construction project management team, superintendents, foremen, your general contractor, et cetera. Also, they may be suitable for smaller projects where a subcontractor or contractor needs access to a building, needs to be able to get to and from their vehicle quickly to access tools and materials. This is a slide showing the contractor parking permit sponsorship application form. Primary information required here is the sponsoring department information, sponsoring department, project manager, contact information, and the duration for which they're sponsoring the project. General contractor information or subcontractor information and their contact information is very important. And a brief project description, which basically the name of the project, the duration, start and end time, and maybe some details as to whether it's a phased project where initially maybe you'll have 1 or 2 vehicles, it'll ramp up to maybe 10, 20, 50, whatever the size of the project is, so that we can plot out what your parking needs will be. Parking and transportation services will identify your parking location for your project based on your needs and the availability of parking. Typically, we may issue parking identifiers in lieu of a Stanford parking permit. Those identifiers identify specific parking locations, whether they be in a specific lot, a section of a parking lot, on land adjacent to a parking lot. It's very important that contractors and their employees understand that a parking identifier does not give them license to park anywhere on campus there is a parking space or in any landscape area. We are trying to protect those landscape areas and also make sure that we maintain sufficient parking for those who are paying for parking, Stanford affiliates, et cetera. Here we have a slide of the main quad. I put this up here because this is the pedestrian zone access map for 2011-12. The green lines along the perimeter outline the pedestrian zone. This is not applicable to all projects, obviously, or project managers in this room, but for anyone who is managing projects within the main quad, within the pedestrian zone access area, please familiarize yourself with the pedestrian zone access protocol, which is on our website, and which I will provide a link on one of the next slides. Just note briefly that this green line is the outline. The solid red dots represent pneumatic bollard locations, which require a remote control device issued by PNTS. We are the ones responsible for restricting access into the pedestrian zone. It is our responsibility to maintain a safe environment for bicyclists, pedestrians, et cetera. Any vehicles that are allowed to gain access into the pedestrian zone are required also to display a pedestrian zone identifier, which identifies the duration for which they're allowed to park, whether that be valid dates and or times that they can park there. Here is a slide showing some helpful links. Parking.stanford.edu is our parking information webpage. On that page, vehicle policies, service and delivery vehicle policies, services for contractors, maps. So we have a large number of maps available for contractors as well. Also helpful links to the various policies that we have at Parking and Transportation. Also, the pedestrian zone access protocol, there is a link to that protocol actually, which has a link to the pedestrian zone access map. Slide showing contacts. Some of you may have worked with some of our staff already in making project arrangements. If you're not familiar with anyone on our staff, then you can certainly contact me directly, or you can send an email to parkingoperations@stanford.edu, which includes everyone. Everyone in these contacts is included on that email distribution list. And next, I'd like to introduce Suman Chaubey from Maps and Records. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Suman from Maps and Records. By a show of hands, how many have visited our website or have been into our office? All right. As you all may know, we are a wealth of information. If you are looking for an emergency assembly point on campus, we have a map for that. If you're trying to look for a floor plan, I can show you how to track one down. We have many self-help applications, and we love to show them off. We have the searchable campus map, base map online, and my personal favorite, home of the record documents, the online archive database. Our discussion topics include document management, maps and records deliverables, and project turnover. I also have some helpful links. We have a lot of information at Maps and Records, and you may ask yourself, what do we use it for? Our purpose is to provide the university with construction-related information for institutional usage in a single repository. We use that information for emergency preparedness and planning, campus planning, project planning, and building maintenance support. Now, let's get into the project document turnover. We require the following for the as-built package, and what we're looking for is one set of large format documents, 24 by 36 or 30 by 42, scaled, best scaled to fit on the architectural scale. We also ask for the corresponding AutoCAD files and PDF files. In addition to the drawings, we are asking for the related documents, which include building permits, specifications, and O&M manuals, operation maintenance manuals. Keep in mind, our archive can only be a success if project managers turn in their drawings at the end of the project. When submitting your turnover package, please use the as-built transmittal letter that we have available on our website. After we receive your turnover package, it takes us about 3 months for it to be fully available via our online archive database. Here are the helpful links. I like to highlight the second one from the bottom, which will take you directly to the as-built transmittal template. Contacts myself and Violet Subia. We both sit in the front office, so please come and visit us. We love to answer questions. If you have a request or an inquiry, you can send that to the MAPS request email that we have listed there.